Talking Tuesday. It's what we do. We just sit around, smoke a pound, and talk about what we do in the cannabis world. We gon' let you know how the business go on a brand new show. Talking Tuesday. Show you how to do it right.
Yo, welcome to Token Tuesday, live. And we are here, real cannabis players, talking about real cannabis issues. Make sure you guys look us up. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on all streaming platforms, we're on YouTube. Go down, click the subscribe button, and just tap it and subscribe. Check in with us here. Mm-hmm. You know, the fellas that are here all the time giving you the best information in the cannabis industry, giving you real information in the cannabis industry. Today we have a guest. And our guest is Oliver Summers.
Welcome.
Coined as the Duke of Pico. Marco, go right ahead and give us some info about my man Oliver here.
Yeah, welcome Oliver Summers. So there's a brief introduction on Oliver Summers. Is considered an OG dispensary operator, cultivator of boutique genetics, and leading advocate for medical marijuana, California since 2003.
2003, y'all heard it.
In 30 years of selling cannabis, Oliver Summers has weighed out bags of weed in people's apartments, opened one of the first Los Angeles medical marijuana dispensaries, become an outspoken advocate for safe access to the boardroom as a CEO of a publicly traded cannabis company. The Duke of Pico, a legal pot dealer to corporate cannabis CEO in 30 years, tells the stories of illegal dealings in the 1990s that eventually morphed into the opening of the earliest medical marijuana dispensaries in Los Angeles, the struggles of DEA raids, robberies, burglaries, and financial hurdles, to personal events like getting fired as a cameraman for the Howard Stern show because of cannabis, or friends giving an intervention for running a dispensary. Oliver and a small cannabis community bonded during all the battles of quasi-legalization, created advocacy groups to protect the laws of California patients, and eventually became entrepreneurs, all of which helped change the discussion of cannabis into the current big business that it is today.
Thank you, Marco, for that. I'm just going to put this up here and show y'all. This is my man, Oliver Summers. Hey, he's an OG.
Yeah.
Been around from the very beginning. Y'all go on Amazon, look for this book right here, The Duke of Pico. Y'all
Oliver
support
Summers.
my guy right here. He's one of the OGs from back in the day. When y'all hear me talk about my colleagues, right here, this is one of them. Go out and support my man here right now. Not now, but right now. So we're going to jump right on into it. Mr. Keith, you got anything to say, brother, before we get to cracking, lacking? He up in the house.
Hey, I just want to welcome Oliver to Token Tuesday, and I know he's going to bring a wealth of knowledge to our audience. I'm over here biting at the bits, just waiting for it.
Right on. So, brother, Oliver, thank you for coming on the show today, man.
Thank you.
Well,
it's a pleasure having you, man. It makes my heart smile to see a brother like you, not just see you, but see you still around, involved in the industry in some form or fashion. It's been a long time coming for us to even see what we see today. Talk to us about what actually got you into the cannabis industry, whether it be the legal part or whether it be the illicit part of your very start. What interests you about cannabis? Talk to us about that.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I mean, I'm literally blushing, and so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, like most of us, I mean, it was, your first hit from a pipe or whatever, bong, joint, and you just kind of were like, wait a second, this is pretty cool. I like this. What is this?
Right on.
And that was, I was visiting a friend in Bakersfield, California back in 1987. And we smoked behind a Bank of America. And ever since then, that was it. So I can honestly say that at least my first experience was pure California flower, which was great. But then, I didn't anticipate an industry or anything at the time and I was planning on being a filmmaker and making movies like all the rest of us, and moved to LA in 94. But until that point, I had been, buying bags of weed and selling 7/8, keeping one for yourself, and just keep flipping them. And that was the way we did everything. And I was living in New York and Boston, and we were just selling weed. And in the background, it wasn't like a job. It was just something that you needed to have yours, and it was the way to go.
So it wasn't the old motto, never get high on your own supply. It was sell this so I can get high on my own supply.
Exactly. I
That's
mean,
like how
and
everybody
eventually
starts.
you just started morphing into bigger bags and selling more ounces and this, that, and the other. And moved to LA, became, worked on these movie sets. Coincidentally, my very first year in LA, I worked on, I got involved in what they would call at the time the urban productions. So I worked on nothing but Panther, Tales from the Hood, and Friday.
Okay.
So that's where I met like DJ Pooh and all those guys. And I started buying from these Crips that I had met on this is in
He bought from the Crips
in 94. They were running security on one of the sets, and they hooked me up. And next thing you know, I was buying, and I was doing the same thing. I was working on movie sets, but I would be selling herb in the background just as it went along. As for the medicinal front, I grew up in New York City in the 70s and 80s, and my father was a very famous hairstylist. So we were very involved in the Studio 54 crowd and that whole world.
back in the day, for real, y'all.
And
Studio 54.
yeah, I mean,
And
really.
he was looking for
And-
more powder than grass.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was my parents, I'll say at that time. But all our family friends started dying of AIDS in the early 80s. And I was exposed as an early age to these people who were smoking a lot of weed to survive. And they were eating, and I would have
Be able
these
to eat.
but so it was just this positive. My parents never made it anything more than like, this is their medicine, this is what they're using to survive. Then, of course, during the 80s, it was during the Just Say No period, and Nancy Reagan, and we'd go to school, and they would be like, if you touch a joint, you're going to, become a junkie, you're going to get AIDS, and you're going to die. Yeah. And that was what we lived on back in the day, on how we were taught about
Unfortunately,
everything. Yeah. So I was watching these two different worlds, and also, we were watching our movies and stuff. And so cannabis was always positive in pop culture, positive in my personal life, but it was being demonized all the time in the background. So these two worlds mix. So when Prop 215 came around, and in the late 90s, and Richard Lee and all of those guys up in Oakland were really starting, Dennis Perone, we're dealing with this, I was very interested, and I knew the positives. And again, we never expected an industry or any of that stuff at this point. We just wanted to see sick people legally get their product, and it just made sense. So I remember I bought my first Prop 215 pin, and I went out and, did a little, it wasn't necessarily a protest, there was like a little gathering in West Hollywood, and again, nothing major. Passed. SB 420 comes around a few years later.
For y'all, State Senate Bill 420, SB 420.
And that allowed for the distribution of cannabis through dispensaries for the most part. And up in, the Bay Area, you had your Berkeley Patients Group and SR 71. And they were mimicking the Amsterdam-style shops where it was literally a girl sitting in a tiny closet and a folder full of bud that really only had like 5 strains or whatever at the time. And we were still beyond excited. That was a dispensary. You could go, but the Recs were costing us $350.
Oh my goodness, yes they were.
it's kind of funny seeing as right now the Menendez Brothers miniseries is very popular and everything. And I bought my first doctor's recommendation from Dr. William Vickery, who was the forensic psychologist to the Menendez Brothers, as many of us did.
Go figure.
So then it was a little matter of time, and then after a while, West Hollywood opened up their first dispensaries, and they started getting hit immediately by the
That was
DEA.
the Yellow House. Was it? You remember the Yellow House?
I loved the Yellow House. Gold Star Pharmacy. As
Gold Star, that's right. See, y'all, hey, this is history right here. See, the Yellow House, Gold Star Pharmacies, West Hollywood was popping. See, back during the AIDS era, and this is what Oliver is talking about. One thing I'd like to talk, because he did speak on the film industry. And how the film industry was coming along. But you know what popped in my mind when you started saying weed and film, the first thing I thought about was Halloween. Because in Halloween, if you go back and watch, and we getting close to Halloween, so they might start playing these old movies, but when you watch Halloween, I remember the guy and the girl was in the bedroom and they were smoking weed together, right? This was on regular TV.
Absolutely.
Then I think back to even the first Terminator, when the girl and the guy was in there passing the joint back and forth. You
and
know
it's
what
like
I'm saying?
Jason Camp Crystal Lake. It's always they got weed at Camp Crystal Lake. That's why a lot of the kids
to the one that blows my mind even more. Stir Crazy with Richard Pryor.
Oh my goodness.
The very first scene of the movie is him working as a waiter at a private party in which the chef accidentally uses his stash to cook the dinner, and everybody gets lit.
Yeah.
And at one point he's holding it and goes, "This is from the motherland. It came all the way from across this." And to me, when I saw that a couple of years ago, my mind was blown, because I watched Stir Crazy on HBO as a 10-year-old boy, maybe 25, 30 times. And it just goes to show how it was building.
Absolutely.
Even as we got later, Revenge of the Nerds, the scene where nobody's at the party, everybody's sitting across from each other, and then all of a sudden Booker pulls out the joints.
Yeah.
It was pop culture. Everybody was bonding.
Absolutely.
And weed was always this great thing. But then we would go to school the next day and they would be like, "Oh my God, only losers touch it. Only if you do it, you're just a fool." And meanwhile, you're like, "Wait a minute. These guys here look fine, and yet this is..."
Well, the crazy part about it, and when I went to school, they did have a group called the Stoners, or that were considered Stoners. But let me tell you something about them Stoners. They were the straight A students.
Sure.
So I don't know what they talking about. All the Stoners that I knew in school were all straight A students back in the day. So, I mean, it to me has always been contrary to what.
Well, I can honestly say I wasn't a straight A student, but I was a hardcore athlete. So there was a contrary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, either you was a straight A student, you was an athlete, you
was something.
Stoning came in some kind of way. So moving forward, you're in the industry. Let's talk about some of the early activism days, and how was that for you? Because people aren't familiar with the old school activism or the old school participation. What was that like? Could you kind of just...
Well, I can honestly say that, again, it started organically for me in the hardcore way. I made friends with these people at a dispensary up in Van Nuys. And so I was visiting them every week, and they were great people, and I was super friends with them. I would hang out with them outside of work, and they got raided, and they got arrested.
Now, this shop was what shop?
THC Van Nuys.
Oh, THC Van Nuys.
Yeah, back on Sherman Way and Van Nuys Boulevard. I mean, and it was just this young couple that worked there. They were just bud tenders, but they got arrested, and this will take you back. I was on Weed Tracker.
Weed Tracker. Weed Tracker.
Weed Tracker.
And
so just for that, I got to preference this for the crowd that don't know. So Weed
know.
Tracker was around before
Before
Weed Maps. You see what I'm saying? So
Weed Tracker
there was normal, there was Cal normal forms of those were our forms of advertisement, and then Weed Trackers came in. Now it was short lived, but it came in
Weed
before
Tracker
anything else.
Yeah, they had a good 3-year run there of really helping us with the advocacy back in the day.
Yeah,
Because
they did.
they had that bulletin that came up and they said THC Van Nuys is being raided and we need protesters. And I was just like, well, I've never protested anything in my life. Like actually like gone to held a sign above my head or screamed.
Yeah.
But I found myself getting into my car and driving up to Van Nuys, and I saw my friends handcuffed out front. And I saw these group of people who were just in the face of the cops. They had zero fear. And people were in wheelchairs. There were people on crutches. And they were, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it right now because it was so like, oh my God, look at these people who are just fighting so hard.
Passionate.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yes.
And there was nothing fake about it. There was nobody there for Instagram pictures because there was none of that back then. They were there, and
you weren't doing it for views.
And next thing you know,
clicks or likes.
you're getting caught up into it because they were like, you're like, if this person is doing it, then there's no reason why I shouldn't be doing it.
Absolutely.
And, the crowd gets riled up. You get sucked into it, and the energy was crazy. And then next thing you know, it was like over. And it was like what I imagine like a rock star must feel like after a concert or something. You're just kind of jazzed and ready to go. Yeah. And they were like, we're going to have this meeting tomorrow at a dispensary called CPG over in West Hollywood, which was run by Don Duncan at the time. Yeah. And we're going to organize some things and talk about that. I talk with my hands a lot.
Yeah,
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Hey, we here.
We right here with you.
And so next thing I know, I was going to this meeting, and Don Duncan he was the head of ASA at the time.
Yes.
And he was just this.
ASA, so just so y'all know, ASA, Americans for Safe Access, was a real, that was or is still to this day, an organization that was really pushing for, just cannabis reform as a whole throughout the, and it wasn't throughout the country yet. It just started right here because Oliver, we have to, just really give people a preference that Los Angeles was ground zero for the medical marijuana fight. Yep. Los Angeles, in Southern California, period, was the true essence of cannabis activism. So when he talks about that, you guys, I just want you guys to really understand the activism part and how California, LA in particular, was the driving force of pushing cannabis throughout the world. Understand that, my man.
Yeah, I know. I just, you when you sometimes feel like we were like this grain of sand and that pushed this entire world the way it is now. It's really mesmerizing to see.
Absolutely.
Because back then, we couldn't fill a room filled with people. And while Oakland was such a great spot for the Prop 215, and we want to make sure that everybody knows that, they were the ones who brought it to the country.
Absolutely.
And really gave us the entrance. LA took it to the next level because, like I was saying, was the Oakland shops were imitating Amsterdam at the time, and when they came we started opening up the shops down here in LA, we were like, you know what, that's not going to work.
Not for us.
We need to have like a little bit of display, a little bit of pizzazz to it and stuff. And we built the dispensary model that it is today.
That's right.
People really underestimate that part.
I bring that up a lot. Yep.
Yeah, I was around when they created the word bud tender.
Yeah.
You know, people were like laughing because they were like, we're like bartenders except for with weed and bud. They're like, we're like bud tenders. Ha 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 ha. Again, nobody expected the lexicon of the world to all of a sudden embrace bud tender to become
absolutely
this ginormous thing, you know? And again, like when we opened 420cc, which was our first dispensary on Pico and La Cienega, and this was at the end of '05, it was a joke. It was like, hey, we're going to come in. It's going to be a little smoking lounge. People can come in, $5, buy a bowl of weed, roll a joint, whatever, and you could just sit and hang out as a place outside of your living room. We don't expect it to last, but think about it this way. You're selling weed out of your living room right now. People call you at 10 p.m. at night for a bag of weed, 12 p.m., 1 a.m., whatever, you know, and you want to make that money, you got to hustle. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. You got to get up and go move that bag of weed.
That's right. That's right.
But now they're like, hey, no, you're there from 10 to 8 p.m. You close the door at night, you go home, nobody's calling you. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, that sounds kind of cool. I want to go and do something, sell weed out of a shop for like a normal hours. All right, but this isn't going to last. And that first year was the greatest year of my life. It was amazing. And then our shop was shut down by the DEA landlord letters, which, as people don't know, for the price of a stamp, the DEA were threatening landlords back in the day with asset forfeiture. And they basically, that's how they were sort of closing down all the dispensaries in LA. And it was only a handful of landlords that were like, yeah, I'd like to see you try.
Exactly.
But it was a legitimate threat.
Luckily, I had a landlord. You know, it's funny that you say that because my landlord that I had on, it was 441 and a half.
Western
16th Street.
Oh, okay.
On the 16th Street, right? So my landlord was an Asian dude, right? His English wasn't the greatest. And so the DEA approached him and said, hey, man, you need to kick this guy out and shut him down. You know what he told them? He said, hey, you're the police. You kick him out and shut him down. You know what I'm saying? That ain't my job. He pays his rent on time. Sure. I'm not kicking him out. I'm not shutting it down because he didn't. When you have that person that comes from a different country, right? Their thought process is more practical, not
the law.
Yeah, not what we consider. What he thought was that's not practical.
Right.
What's practical is that you the police. You do your job and shut him down and kick him out. But I'm the landlord that let him come in. So as far as I'm concerned, he good with me. He can stay. Right. So, but he
some of us didn't get so lucky.
Yeah, and so it's funny because I only got kicked out of one shop with that DEA landlord threat letter, and I didn't get kicked out. They were nervous. That was my Crenshaw store.
Right.
And they were nervous because they owned a lot of property on that block.
What happened to me.
And they had already been through an audit that was a 2-3 year audit that was like turned their lives upside down. So they just really didn't want any problem. And I understood the lady was older. The son was.
Essentially, that was us. I mean, the guy
when we got the letters, we'd either shut down before the landlord would even say anything, just to be like, screw it, or we'd stay there till we got raided.
It just wasn't worth it at that point, and it was funny because it was right at that moment and this is the most infamous LA cannabis thing that nobody seems to understand, but is the most important piece of information. What happened in September 2007? The interim control ordinance.
Oh my God.
Was
that
created.
meeting, that was crazy. So we were all at LA City Council, right? And we're sitting there and we're at the meeting and they're passing this ordinance. And it's crazy because, I worked on that steering committee to craft that piece of policy.
I was
we
around
all
on
did.
that too.
Yeah, we all did, right? So the crazy part about it, we're sitting in City Hall, right? And this is during the old days, Jan Perry, Bernard Parks, Ed Rosenthal, Bill Rosenthal. It was Garcetti. He was council president. Man, that was a regime, but they were supporting this, and so I was dealing straight with Janice Hahn. Because Janice Hahn was there. So
she was one of our connects.
And I was working closely because she had asked me how many shops are open in LA, right? She wanted to know that. So I was like, And so she said, okay, can you find that out for me? And everybody was looking around like, I'm not going on. I said, don't worry, I got it. But anyway, so we're sitting there in the city hall. And the gavel hits, and so they passed the ICO, which is the Interim Control Ordinance, which allowed us to do what we were doing.
It's the basis of, though, everything that's come since then. It's amazing to see how that became the key moment.
Exactly.
Just, it seemed so innocuous at the time, like... They basically asked us to come down to City Hall and put our name on a piece of paper. And at the time, it sounds so easy now. It sounds so it just sounds so easy. But at the time, it was literally putting your name on a list.
On a hit list.
On a hit list.
That's
now
how
you're
we
exposed.
felt. Like nobody really wanted to. Now, the crazy part about that, so let me just tell y'all what happened, though. So let me tell you this, and then we'll get back to the list, right? Nobody really wanted to go on that list because they understood. They were like, shoot, if I go on that list, then they're going to know where to find me, how to get me, and they're going to raid me. So there were only a few brave people that wanted to even go on that list. But when that gavel hit in City Hall, and we were all cheering and happy and everything, and people saw it, then all of a sudden something strange happened. Everybody's phones start ringing all at one time. Because remember, we had that phone where everybody was connected to the thing, right? And the people at council are looking like, what the heck is going on? And we start vacating the room. Like, raid is going down on this shop. Raid is going down on this shop. Raid is going down on this shop. So we looking around like, and now we all have to scramble to get out of there. What turned to be what we thought was a joyous moment turned out to become a nightmare at the same damn time. A joyous time of the gavel hitting, meaning that the ICO passed and we're looking to a brighter future. But on the flip side, the Feds is in LA deep. And they raided what? How many shops? That was about 11 shops.
That was the 11 shop day, yes.
Yeah, 11 shops raided.
It was all in one day.
All in one day. So they had 11-man strike team. What? Sunset, Santa Monica.
They hit all the shops.
La Cienega.
Yep.
Shoot, I think the pharmacy got hit. The pharmacy got hit. LAPCG got hit.
It was a huge, crazy situation. And that ICO became the basis of everything because it became basically, if you put your name on that list, you were a legal dispensary.
Absolutely.
And anybody whose name wasn't, you were in an illegal dispensary.
Absolutely.
And that's all it came down to. And that became the next generation of the fight. Like, basically, I like to really always say, like, there's so many different generations of OGs in this town when it comes to cannabis.
Yes,
I mean, there's the pre-215 people, like the old school.
The Jack Herreras, the Ed Rosenthal's, the
Exactly.
Eddie Leps.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Got to throw out my boy Mojave Richmond and Robert
Yeah.
C. Clark and
There
all
you
those
go.
guys.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, then you get into that next generation of the medical and our whole thing, which was a huge part because it was really just a changeover. And then we have this new generation now, the post ICO world, which lasted for a good 2007 to probably like 2000, like 15
to
16,
17,
right up until the Prop 64 thing.
Yeah.
And in this time, this is when the rules were getting so manipulated
Oh my God.
and so changed around, and we were being tossed around as such a political football. And if it wasn't for the actions of a lot of us,
Absolutely.
there would literally be no cannabis business. I stand by that.
In the world, period.
Yeah, I stand by it.
So
because-
I always tell people, if we didn't do what we did in L.A., Denver wouldn't have tried it, because L.A. was what everybody was looking at. Had L.A. failed, everybody else would have said, shit,
Yeah.
we ain't about to do that.
they were all watching us so closely at that point.
Yeah.
And the ones that were trying to do medical up in like Washington and stuff, they were like, if LA can't do it, then they were on the verge of tearing it all down.
Exactly.
And during those years, I mean, I can't even emphasize how many times like the city attorney with Carmen Trutanich
Oh, my
and
Steve Cooley before that.
Steve Cooley was the district attorney. And
Yes.
then we had the city council hated us, and everybody was just constantly fighting us. And we had these illegal shops that would open up, and they had zero sense of trying to do something for the bigger picture. It was all about themselves. They would stay open all night.
That
They
was
would,
me and my people.
That was
Yeah.
the Valley.
yeah.
That's me and my people. We're all about the money.
Guilty party.
Like,
over
yeah,
here. That was the
because my
Valley.
generation, I'm an '01, but I graduated in '01. You know what I'm saying? So while you guys were doing that, you guys were opening the gateway for people my time that were hungry for the bread. Like,
Right.
like our only thought process was we knew everything was short lived. We knew we could get rich in 6 months and in 1 year. Our whole thing was always, as long as I stay open for 6 months to 1 year, I'm good, and I'll move on.
But you see
it's
that-
a different mentality.
You said the funny thing right there was the get rich part, because the rest of us were paying for the lawyers and the
Yeah.
accountants
Yeah.
and the lobbyists. And so I was with a shop called CPA, California Patients Alliance,
Yep.
over on Melrose and Sweetser from 07 until 2015. And we were a real center point for advocacy.
Yes.
And a lot of people would come to us for all
Absolutely.
that. And we spent half our time just trying to chase down money. And because we were trying to lead the way, we were just constantly giving our own money to all these things.
Man.
So we were broke. I mean, it was
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I never, all those years of doing that, and everybody kept saying, you know,
Yeah,
you
you're
must be
rich.
so rich. And I always used to make the joke, like, if I had $1 for every time
Someone
people
said that.
said you're so rich, I'd probably be as rich as they tell me I am.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, at
Yeah.
that point, but we were just hemorrhaging money, and these other shops were just coming in, doing what they had to do, and we really kind of felt it was an unfair situation because we were the ones whose names were on the papers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were the ones who were the easy hits, and if anything was being affected by the rules of the new city councils, it was us who
Us,
had to
yeah.
deal with it because it
Yeah.
didn't affect the others. So that's when we created GLACA,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
was the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance, which
right.
originally just started as a self-regulating group of dispensaries.
Yes.
We created our own little set of rules,
Yes.
and we wanted to show the city, like, look, we're not them.
Yes.
We're good people. Look at how hardcore we do everything. And
Exactly.
we would go and do surprise inspections on each other and make
yeah.
sure everybody was following the rules to the
Yeah.
T and all that. And then again, GLACA started as just this little thing and morphed into the forefront of the advocacy world. We were all involved, everybody.
Yeah.
There was no social equity. There
No.
was no corporate. There was
No.
nothing. It was us.
Yes.
And we all worked together. We were a team. We were a family.
Absolutely.
Mean,
We
would
looked
have,
out for one another.
Yeah.
it was one gets hit, we'd all shut down
And
and
go
go
there.
protest for the day.
Exactly.
It was one and all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. And I look back to those times now, as much as I was stressed, and there would be, I can count at least 5 times where the city council said, that's it, we're banning all shops. As of Friday, every dispensary in LA is illegal.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? And we would have to go in, and we were the ones who fought them.
Exactly.
We were the ones who overturned all that stuff.
Exactly.
We were the ones who spent the hours upon hours in neighborhood council meetings trying to convince the small neighborhoods to trickle up to their city council people
To support what we're doing.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
So let me jump in real quick, because that is very important. What he's saying, and let's look at it even in present day. When we started Measure M, the people that are in the industry now didn't pay a dime towards Measure M, right? We've got Measure M funded, we got Measure M passed, but guess who benefits from it? The same scenario, and it didn't change. It was the real people who were really willing to put themselves on the line for the advancement of cannabis. And then guess what? These corporate clowns come in and benefit off the backs of people like yourself, people like myself, people like Marco, who have been in this industry from the very beginning and have built these things and put these things in place. And like you say, when stuff went bad, those shops that Marco was talking about and what you were talking about, they didn't get the hit. We got the hit. And just like even today, when you look at a licensed shop and you look at an unlicensed shop, well, guess what? Like we were just saying, they'll drive right by those 3 unlicensed shops and they'll come to me and regulate me and say, oh, your product is this. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. Oh, you need to do that. And if we come back and it's not done, we're going to close you down.
Yeah.
Well, did you go by there and say that to them 3 unlicensed shops that you just passed before you got to me? So it's always the people who are willing to fight the fight, unfortunately, fights that fight, wins that fight, but everybody else benefits from that fight, which is really what we want. But I think the disheartening part is that those people contribute nothing towards the industry at all. And then when they get in, they don't even bring any added value to the industry in a positive light. They just figure, well, we just go rogue even bigger.
Yeah.
Because now what we've done is loosen up the vice and release the channels and open up the floodgates, and now they come rushing in and say, oh, we just gonna wild it. Because now, guess what? They're not gonna bother us. Well, why aren't they bothering us? Because people like you, myself, like you, we put ourselves on the line so that they don't bother us, and then they disrespect the program.
absolutely.
Hey Virgil, I got a question for Oliver. You know what? Thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial fight for this cannabis industry. Um, this is a quote from a cannabis economist. Her name is Bo Whitney. She says they tax them heavily, they regulate them heavily, they couldn't make any money. California charges 15% excise tax on marijuana sales on top of additional local marijuana taxes. And this could go as high as 19%. Oliver, when you hear about this market and the taxes that they're making on it, and we talk about these advocacy groups that could actually benefit from, the cities and the states and the counties sharing some of this profit, what do you say to them, and how can we literally advocate to get some of these taxes reduced?
It's it's an amazing thing actually. Well, I appreciate the question because it is obviously the taxes is one of our biggest hurdles right now in the industry. I mean, it's absurd at this point. It just gets worse every day. The fact that it keeps growing and growing and growing. But as for the lobbyists and all of that, the problem is that we have 4,000 splintered groups now. There are no unified voices to everything. Everybody, these lobbyists all have their own connections. They're going in, one saying one thing, one saying. I mean, the perfect example right now is Florida. You're looking at Florida. It's about to be voted on, and it's a hardcore law written by business people. There's no homegrown allowed in it, but at the same time, it's being pushed as the door opening for legalization in Florida, which who can argue with that? Florida has been one of the most regulated, hardcore states to, I mean, I wouldn't visit my grandmother back in the day simply because I knew that I just smelt of weed too much and I would get locked up in Florida. Mm-hmm. But to see them advocate for such things where there's no home grow, it's like that's who did that?
Yeah.
A business lobbyist did that. And you've got 4 to 5 different companies that are all got their own lobbyists. They've all got their own people. Maybe some cross over into certain groups, some don't. And it's splintered. And it's basically, though, kind of when I was getting back to with the history of cannabis thing is that with GLACA, come 2016, when Prop 64 had come in, you almost have to think of it as almost like a TV show where we were in like this new season where they had replaced so many of the old characters that literally this new season was all new people. None of the old people were there except as guest stars. And then you had these spin-offs. You had California Minority Alliance, you had the Southern California Coalition, UCBA, all great groups, all doing what they had to do, but the sense of sort of infighting and splintering sort of started happening, of people trying to be like, well, I need this to happen. They're like, I need this to happen. And then you had the corporate people that came in and broke that. And it seemed that our one large voice has now become dozens and dozens
of different voices. I started to recognize during that time a lot of people were self-serving and self-centered in that fight. It like you said, it no longer, because I'm a founding member of GLACA, but I also was a founding member of Southern California Coalition, a founding member of California Minority Alliance. So that we understand the dynamics. During that time, there were outsiders, like you said, coming and converging in on LA.
A lot.
And we were at this meeting. I was at this meeting. This first time I met Adam Spiker, which was our executive director of California Minority Alliance. At that time, I was a part of Eric's group, which was the Cultivators Alliance.
Yes. Was
When
that where we were at that restaurant?
Yeah, we were at the restaurant over there.
I was there with
in
Gold.
Hollywood.
Yes. So.
Yeah, the first time I came in and Eric hadn't seen me since I've been out of jail.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Was when I then started and I joined and said I got to get back into the activism part, right? So I recognized after a while the landscape and what was going on, and I heard all of these outsiders, went to a meeting, and everybody introduced themselves from a different state. They weren't from California. I was the only one, and Adam was the only one sitting in there from California, and I'm looking around and like, wait a minute, we getting ready to transition here. Prop 64 is looming over our heads right now, and it's moving in a strong direction, and things are going to change. But these outsiders is getting ready to dictate what LA is about to do, right? So at that moment, there was a pivotal time in my mind that said, nobody's paying attention to this. I got to sound the alarm, and I got to make sure that something happens, right? So that's when I went to a couple of the Glocka meetings to get a feel what was going on, and said, look, we're going to have to try to figure this out, because if not, these outsiders are going to come take this industry over, right? So you had Cultivators Alliance, Delivery Alliance, Manufacturer Alliance, you had UCBA, you had Glocka, you had and Southern California Coalition hadn't really been formed yet, and you had the task force,
Oh, right.
the Cannabis Task Force.
Hmm.
CMA hadn't really been formed yet, but was on the verge of being formed, and that was really pushed through the NAACP with Alice Huffman, pushing me and Donnie to do that. And Donnie really took control of that, and he and I co-founded
Rest in peace.
I
California
was just
Rest
gonna
in
say,
Peace. Yeah.
just my boy, I miss him. You know,
Yeah.
Donnie. Before Donnie became an activist, Donnie was a client of mine. That's
Right.
all I like to always say.
Right on.
For years before Donnie became this big marijuana master, he was just a good old client of mine. Him and Pooh used to come in and buy from me
Used
all
to
the
buy
time.
weed from me. And the funny part about it is, when you said you bought weed from the Crips, I said, damn, that was my weed. Because
Probably.
at that time, I was supplying the hood. I was the hood's people back then. There wasn't a neighborhood in L.A., gang-related, Crip, Blood, SA, that wasn't getting my weed that I pushed, that I put
wouldn't be
on the
surprised.
streets back then, because I had the east side and the west side sold the fuck up. Just keeping it real, y'all. Had it sold the fuck up. Ask anybody during that time, late 80s all the way through the 90s. We talking the Chronic album. We talking Death Row Records. We talking all through that era. Your boy here was bringing the load down and putting it out there, the goodness out there. And all them cats that was in the streets, yeah. So anyway, getting
Can
back
I say
to it.
though that is a thing though about that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, bud.
I'm sorry. I wanted to get one more question in because I know our time is rolling. So,
Yes.
Oliver, speaking of the Duke of Pico, if he was rolling up right now with this group, what he smoking on?
Oh, when it comes down to it, even though I'm a born and raised New York boy, so I should be a sour diesel person, I'm OG Kush through and
OG
through,
Kush.
all day, every day. That's all I grow. So my particular, I have my own genetic. There was an old cultivator from way back in the day, who passed away a long time ago, but he had this gas, which was it was literally called the gas, and it was a Malibu 91 OG cross a sour diesel 91, and after he passed, I had these 7 seeds. And I went through all of them, and we finally cracked the one. So I have this Duke of Pico OG. That's basically it's like 65% sativa, and Eric Holstrom at Legacy Strains has it. So,
Oh, okay. Eric still have it. Okay.
yeah, that's
All
where
right.
I have it parked right now.
He still has it for sure. Because I remember he had the
better.
Malibu. Remember he used to sell
That was
Malibu?
my Malibu. That was
Yeah,
it.
we used
that
to,
was
we
your
used to smoke
Malibu.
them.
That was it.
Because we used to sell
Yeah, we used to
Malibu
sell
91.
legacy strains all day.
Yeah.
That was my Malibu.
But I know he lost a lot of genetics though.
Yeah, I'm hoping he better still have it.
I
on
hope
that
so,
brand.
because
Yeah.
My goodness.
that's when he had the yeah.
But right now, I just grew a couple of different varieties. I had these old OG seeds from way back in the day. I mean, I'm talking they must be 20 odd years old. And I cracked them this season and grew them in my backyard. And they came out wild looking. And I've been smoking those pretty much consistently since I harvested them a
You
couple
might
of
have
weeks
to
ago.
slide some of them clones over here. I get them from you
I mean,
and
it was just
throw them over there in that back room right there.
It's I loved it. One of them actually looked like it morphed with this tomato plant that I had been growing in the same pot. It's just
Wow.
it was beautiful. But yeah, OG Kush through and through. And I got to give a shout out right now to the guys from Blem and Cali Lotus.
Okay.
Those guys have some, I think, on the legal market.
They're
right
like
now.
$90 eighths.
Yeah, but it's fire OG.
Yeah, I mess with them.
Yeah, I think they really have some great stuff, and in today's world where nobody grows the OG because it's so difficult, and the
Yeah.
corporate guys hate the idea that it's like, wait, it's 28%, and I can only get a pound and a half of light as opposed to 3.5 pounds of lemon cherry gelato at 39%.
Blend's one of the probably one of the highest priced buds in the market.
Yeah, but they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Really got to give them a shout out
Okay.
for having a good bud
Yeah.
right now, being one of the winners. But yeah, OG Kush, always and forever LA. But as a cultivator, it's one of the biggest things right now that I am most annoyed with in the new industry is these genetics that are on the market and the lack of good OG, good sour diesel, good train wreck. These
Exactly.
14, 15 week sativas that we used to get from Neville's Haze and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to grow that because you get what, 3 pulls a year as opposed to 4.
Yeah.
You're
People
getting
are more concerned about the yield than they are the actual quality of the product, which for me, and like you say, the percentage. When
then-
what you described, and it goes back to what we've always talked about, that OG at low 20% is far better than that crossover at 30%. Gets you higher, keeps you higher longer, smokes better. Everything about it is better. And so I always tell people, don't get caught up in percentages. Don't get caught up in the crosses. Just understand, what generation is this? Is this first generation genetics? I mean, all of that stuff means something. And the actual strain itself is your quality. That's your quality.
The other thing too is then they all go online and they complain the cannabis industry in LA is dying because I can't get rid of my 500 pounds of lemon cherry gelato. And you're like, really? Because this guy here grew 150 pounds of OG, sold it all. It's not sitting on anything from the end.
Exactly.
And he's flipping like crazy, and he's not complaining about the business today. But these guys, they don't seem to correlate. They think, and honestly,
It's the speed of how different people move, though. At least from my experience with like a lot of entities that I deal with, when it comes to that, I believe it has to do with so some of us are still attached to our traditional ways, and there's just people, I hate to say, I'm just gonna keep it real, like my Korean homies, my Chinese homies, like these people only go with what the market says.
Sure.
They're not here to play the game of I believe in the past, or I believe in the present, or I believe in this, or I believe. See, some of us have more historical context to certain things, so we become a little bit more personable with things. When I say I come from an exploitation area, is because I come from cultures who don't really have an attachment to something specific. They have an attachment to the money that they can get out of it.
You're saying the key thing right there.
You see what I'm saying?
Is an attachment.
It's an attachment.
Is much of the big thing of today's people involved in the community do not have that attachment.
There's no attachment
to the product.
No.
I can't emphasize how many times these publicly traded corporate guys have called me Spicoli, from the, Sean Penn character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because just to add to that, what it is with, at least, again, you guys are older, but I graduated in 01, but in 03 I was already running dispensaries, and I've been running dispensaries like nonstop, and 24-hour dispensaries, 3 a.m. I'm talking about like seeing 1,000 people a day by myself. 2,000 people raking in $500,000 a month, $1 million a month, 10 locations. Like, I come from like heavy loads of work. I'm a workhorse. I've been grinding, But the one thing I will say is that I watch how everyone is moving and how everyone's adapting, and I understand this side of what we discuss, but I also see the ones who are winning. They just, no narrative is on their mind. They're never thinking of a narrative. There's no narrative, there's no past, there's no future, there's no history, there's nothing. What it is supply and demand. And they play the game no different than the music industry plays the game, and they play the game no different than the clothing industry plays the game. And it's all about what people want right now. And it changes season to season. What was hot from January to April is not what's hot from May to August. And if you don't know how to jump from trend to trend, That is why some people can win and some people
Unfortunately,
lose. Unfortunately, in the game that we're in today.
Doesn't it find, though, that they're more, it seems almost, though, that they're more telling people what they want as opposed to listening to what they want.
And that's where I think the true essence of it plays. What Marco is saying is what's happening right now. What we're talking about is what brought us to right now, right? Because what we did brought us to right now. Where we are and what Marco is saying is right now.
Yeah.
What I'm going to tell you, the future is going to hold. Because one thing I feel that I'm gifted with is seeing ahead of time. What's going to happen, what Marco is talking about, is going to play out. And I'm going to tell you why. Because trends come and go.
Sure.
And you can flip-flop to every trend. But there are things in this world that we can point to and look to that didn't follow a trend, that stayed in the pocket and understood what their their message or their goal or their what their theme was, whatever you want to call it, their mission statement was, right, or is, and they stuck with that. So that's why you see the Coca-Colas, right? Pepsi came in, and remember we had the Pepsi generation, and Pepsi was popping, and Michael Jackson was getting his hair burned on that shit on stage, and you know what I'm saying, and all that good stuff. So guess what? Then you had Sprite come in, and keep in mind, 7-Up was before that, right? The Uncola, ha ha ha, the Uncola. Remember that?
Never
you
had
know,
it never will.
Exactly. And so all of this stuff are trends popping all over the place. Then you had Fanta. Then you had all of these other drinks. You had Delaware Punch. You had Tiki Punch. You had all of these little drinks that came into play. And guess who stayed in the pocket and true to the game? Coca-Cola. And guess what's the number one soda selling today? Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Coca-Cola said, fuck the trend. We're going to be the trend. And when you tired of flip-flopping back and forth in that trend, we're going to stay in the pocket. This is what California Cannabis, and I stand on this to this day, is what I'm always going to stay true to. That In-N-Out burger, they didn't go out and make a chicken McNugget. They didn't go out and make a McRib. Burger, shakes, fries. Burger, shakes, fries. Burger, shakes, fries from day one.
Yeah.
They ain't tried to spruce up the burgers, shakes, nor the fries. They making straight up burgers, shakes, fries. Now you see a line around the corner. When I was back in college, I didn't see a line around the corner. That shit was empty as hell.
Yeah.
McDonald's was popping. Burger King was popping. You see what I'm saying? So history has taught me you got to stay true to the game, because what started is what's going to finish it. People are only going to change. This generation at some point in time is going to get old like we did. And guess what they going to want? They going to be tired of that bullshit. And they just going to want something that's good for them, right?
Yeah.
And guess where they going to flow to? They going to go right back in the pocket where they fell out of. Just like when you young, you partying. You go to the club. As you get older, you pull back.
Yeah.
You ain't in the club no more.
And you just said it. I think that's where I believe everything we're discussing is going to coexist, because it is a generational thing. When it's trends, it's a younger generational thing.
Sure.
And there's always going to be a young generation that is always going to set trends and follow trends. And then there's going to those of us who are going to age and want the things that we like. Like, I'm an OG head.
So-
I'm all about OG Kush.
So now let me explain that to you so that everybody understands. That younger generation, unstable. That older generation, stability. Meaning that now they are the ones that are working, hard-working jobs. They got a steady paycheck coming in. That youngster still hopping from job to job, going in and out of jail, doing this and that, doing dumb shit. Ain't no stability. I'm at home with my mama this week. I'm out the house that week. You know, this, that, and the other. No stability there. Yeah, but they find a few dollars to go and buy some weed. But that right there is no stability in reference to a business. What brings stability is who comes shop with us on a regular. That older 25-year-old, 26, 27-year-old, maturing, having a kid or two now, been on his job for his or her job for a while, learning responsibility in life, looking towards becoming a homeowner. Now I am purchasing on a different trend, right? I'm not discounting at all that other trend, because what we have to do, excuse me, as business owners, is learn how to play both games.
Right.
We still have to take care of our people who are relying on us
Yes.
to be here every day, and opening up at the same time and closing at the same time every
Yes.
day, because those hardworking blue collar citizens that are the ones that are keeping this economy flowing are the ones that come in our shop every day and spend that dollar.
Yes.
That youngster is jumping from shop to shop because he's following the trend, or he's looking for the deal, or he's want to go to the shop or spot that's hot at the time.
Yeah, and even the 25 and up guy, though, is a trend also. The reason I say that is because the reason I correlate cannabis to music and fashion is because fashion will always be trendy, even if the trend is going back to the 1970s. Even if the trend already existed, history repeats itself.
Always.
You see, so the
30-year
reason I
mark.
use fashion so much is because you correlate the shoppers with the same mentality. People who like Supreme, people who like Jordans, they will buy the same the Jordan 1s are being released again and again and again. I bought them when I was 18 and I'm still buying them at 50 because I just love my Jordan 1s. I've been this fanatic for it. So in fashion there's more fanatics that are willing to change with things. And cannabis has adapted those same people. The reason I say is because I know them. I hang out with them. They're a group of people who like Pokemon cards. They like Supreme. Sure. They like NFTs. They like Bitcoin. They like anything that's new. So as long as something new comes out, and then it all comes down to who's promoting it as well. It gets promoted by people who they're following, like you said, sometimes the strain, really who's pushing it is just artists, who's rapping about it and who's talking about it. You know what I mean?
That's
But
what
the reason
made
I
Gary
say
Payton
music,
popular.
cannabis, and fashion is because I watch my friends that are the hardcore ones that are into it, but then I see their other hobbies, and then it makes sense why that's how they are, is because the rest of their hobbies are in that category, in that world.
Until you become the trend setter.
Yeah.
And then when you become the trendsetter, then none of that really matters. Why? Because now you're pushing what's hot and what's not, right? And at that point, when you have made yourself a staple in something, right?
Yeah.
And now everybody know you are that go-to person. Like, let's just look back in the day. Everybody knew who to come to if they wanted bomb weed, right? They knew just where to look. And when I told them what was bomb and what was not,
That
they
was
listened.
word.
That
That
was
was it.
word was
Yeah,
born,
that was word.
right?
Yeah.
So it's whoever now is pushing that trend. One thing I will say, right now in the market, there is a empty space right now that's going that people aren't paying attention to. There's no hot record out right now. Right? And I've used that analogy in this industry. First it was the Backpack Boys, it was the Jungle Boys, it was Cookies, it was this, it was that. There's nothing right now really that's really gobbling up that space that's now everybody talking about is the new thing coming out. This is very important for those who want to now drop their album. Because they don't have Snoop taking up all the top of the chart music. They don't have Biggie or Tupac taking it up. They got this gap era ready, and that's how, if you keep in mind, Death Row and Bad Boy Records came in.
Yeah.
Because guess who was fading out? The Run DMCs, the LL Cool J's. They weren't as hot as they were. The Kumo D's,
Yeah.
all the people we was talking about. So it left that gap, and then you had Eazy-E come in with the gangster rap, which was something new that people started taking, and then now spinning off of that, the MC8s, the DJ Quicks. Now you got Death Row Records. And so that gap began to get filled with that. Right now, we got a vacuum going on in the industry.
And what's interesting too is what I would always tell people. Really, it's if you're a cultivator or if you're a white labeler. If you're a white labeler, it's easier to follow trends.
Yeah.
If you're a cultivator, it's not. Because you're not here to be changing up your plants left to right because somebody wants something.
And
It's easier
have
to be more
foresight 6 months in advance.
right. It's easier to be proprietary, and as a cultivator, become proprietary and create something that that you become. That's your staple.
Yeah, it becomes.
But when you're a white labeler, you become a trend. You just follow the trend.
You going with,
You going
like
with
you
the
say, whatever's
I'm
hot.
not growing it.
If I'm a
You know what I'm
retail,
saying?
they selling Jordache jeans. Let me buy a bunch of Jordache jeans.
and
Oh,
sell
they
them.
Those
exactly.
proprietary genetics are a huge part of the future.
In the room with you guys, but I just want to add this. When they reschedule and is pointed more towards a medicinal market, I don't think it'll be about trends. If you look at what most people are using cannabis for, is either pain, is either sleep. So I think that more in the medicinal market, they will start to get more specific attention for the ailments and start creating more genetics to deal with those.
My thing is that we come from the medicinal market.
Yeah.
We already came from that, and we were stoners and potheads. I think any of that data that says pain, relief, blah blah blah, I always feel like all that language is only to make certain people feel okay with cannabis. But people like me, man, we're potheads, bro. And at the end of the day, no one's buying more weed than a pothead. No one's buying more weed than a person that wants to blaze 10 blunts in one day, and they ain't got nothing to do with pain.
Exactly, and
I'm
that's
sorry.
what I was about to say.
They ain't got nothing to do with my pain, yo.
That generation that bounces around that we just talked about over here, like Marco was saying, they're young kids. They ain't no pain.
You ain't caring
So
about no pain.
it ain't got nothing to do with medicinal on that end that Marco's talking about. But when we move over to this side, now we talking medicinal. Now we talking a little bit about pain and what it can work for and how it consumed me and this, that, and the other. What I think needs to happen, and I don't know if it's done, we'd have to look and see where the research is, and I'm going to after this show, is we need to see how much of the cannabis space is being dictated, controlled, or financed by this market versus this market. I'm willing to bet money right now. I'm willing to put $100 on the table that this market widely controls the direction of the cannabis industry versus this market. Because I believe there are more 25 year and up, all the way up to 60, 70, 80, than it is to that 25.
But I'm 41, and I'm from the beginning generation of stoners. So that's why I speak the way I speak. Is because I'm 41 and I'm still a stoner. I'm still a pothead. Because since I was 12 years old, I've been smoking weed heavily in the city of Burbank.
I understand, but you're not a trend bouncer.
No, I'm not a trend bouncer, but I'm definitely a stoner. And the one thing I will say, growing up in the Valley, people like me, the reason I made relationships, and this is the truth, no store would be making as much money as they did without the hustler from the street. Because the hustler from the street is the dude that came to the store to buy more weed to go pump it back to the streets to his stoners. I don't care how many people we talking about. If I'm buying an ounce a day because I'm slanging it back on the block, there's no customer that you got that smokes that's buying more weed, because my weed is going to 20 more people every single day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and if you got 20 of those guys, I'm sorry, that's how we win. We win because of the hustler. We win because of the dude that's coming in getting a QP, and you're like, yo, he becomes your favorite customer because you're like, yo, Larry always coming up in here getting a QP. But that's because Larry going back to the apartment building he's from. He's going back to the block that he's from. He's pumping that weight, and you wouldn't be making $500,000 a month without the Larrys, because all this other dude is getting 25, 25, 35, 35, 25, 25. Larry coming in and spending 1,000 every day, 1,000 every day, 1,000 every day, 1,000 every day.
But I believe that's a whole different person than that one bouncing back and forth.
Yes.
Because you now then brought in the element of a hustler.
Yes.
Which we all came from that hustle era.
Sure.
And we all survived off the hustler.
Yes.
I was the hustler that
hustler's
a whole
the
lot of people. The hustler fed the top of the food chain
to the bottom of the
food chain. You see what I'm saying? He was the one that went and got the weight, brought the weight down, sold the weight, distributed it to everybody that was distributing.
And then like people like me, what we realized, because I grew up in a time when the people were telling me what they wanted to do. I'm from the Valley. I'm from the Valley with all Armenian homies that had a certain mentality, okay? So, and I grew up with them since 1989 and stuff, when they were influx of a certain group, the high estancias, the ones that really came in to like really eat it up, you know? They used to tell me, Marco, we're going to take the money from the streets. That was their pride. So cats like me They took the eighth game away from you. They took the eighth game. They took the wheeling dealing, the little gram, the little eighth. They took that game away. Mm-hmm. But then, like you said, the hustler is every top of the. Because when the hustler walked into the dispensary and saw those guys that we used to sell the eighths to, now they got stores. You go, they still need their weed from somewhere though.
Exactly.
So then the flip side is, all right, cool. You thought you was gonna stop me?
Now
I got 10 pounds. Now I'm selling you the weed, bruh.
Well, you see, so
you see what I'm saying? So
you said two things that are interesting in that aspect, because it is true, very true. I mean, we were all the hustlers. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I still stand behind to this day that people don't buy from the shop. They buy from the person who works at the shop.
Yeah.
That will always be the case. Buying herb from somebody has always been a trustworthy thing. I always used to say, first you met them at the mall, then you got to meet them at the front of their place, then eventually you got invited inside, and then eventually you got to smoke. And all that took like 4 months of selling somebody weed. So it was a trust thing, and that is still always to be there. So I will stand behind that to the day I die, is that people will buy from the individual person over the shop any day of the week.
So I want to jump in with another question. Today, when you look at today's market, from where we started from back in the early days to present day, what are your thoughts about this market? Just flat out open honesty about what you see today. Is this what you envisioned when you got on those picket lines, when you were in those city council chambers, when you were fighting this fight? What was your vision like, and was this your vision of what you see today?
Oh, God, no. When we were in those city council meetings and all that, we were just trying to get to tomorrow, let alone 10 years from now. And we'd always laugh. So I'm really good friends with this guy. I don't know if you know Danny Danko from High Times and all that. So he and I have been friends since we were teenagers. And we used to make a joke, like, New York City isn't going to go legal until we were like 50. Mm-hmm. Well, I turned 50 2 years ago, and New York just went legal. So we were literally like, wow, that actually kind of happened. Mm-hmm. As for these shops, like I said earlier, people are so busy being told what they want, nobody's really listening. So we're in this position now of just kind of having 7-Elevens of all of these stores just selling the exact same things. A lot of the cultivators they're not the best. There's a chapter in my book where I tried to bring in Mojave Richmond with his proprietary genetics to bring it into our company, and they were only going to grow that, and that was going to be our signature strain and all that. And the corporate people were like, well, how much money did he make from that? We're like, well, a lot. It was my biggest selling strain I had for years. And they go, well, can you show us paperwork? And we're like, no, we can't show you paperwork. It was black market. Like, what are you kidding? And they're like, well, we can't justify giving him money for this genetic if we don't know how much it's made. And then we figured, somebody could just pocket the cut and then it would become worthless. And it's like, well, no, it's Mojave's strain tied in with him. So if anybody else were to grow it, they would know it's an automatic knockoff. So he had this perfection. I worked forever on this IP situation, and I could not for the life of me get the corporate people to change their minds on this. So this particular genetic that he has is, I mean, I still love it. I still call him up and like, you got some, and it's just sitting there. Oh, I keep doing that. It keeps sitting there because nobody can really invest and give him the money for something that they don't know. It's like this big corporate circle. And that's where we're at right now, is while we're stuck with everybody's growing lemon cherry gelato, they're growing runts and soap and all of these things. They have high THC numbers, big yield. They don't like growing, like we said, the 15-week sativas or the OG Kushes that are super finicky. Where, I mean, with as a cultivator, for me, growing some of these newer strains, they're like Lego. You put them in the ground, you walk away, they're going to grow. Whereas OG Kush, you put a little water in it, you turn around, next thing you know, it's hanging upside down, looking dead. And you're like, what did I do? What did I do? It's my old hydro guy used to call them Beverly Hills bitches. Because
they were so finicky.
And you sit there, and so corporate's not going to grow that. But I guarantee that those strains put on the shelf will sell 10 times faster
all day, every day
than any of these other ones. But they can't justify in their mind. They see, and then they go, oh, again, I'm sitting on 200 pounds now after the season, and we're about to chop another 500 pounds. We still have 200 pounds left from this last one. What do we do? They're giving it away at rock bottom price. They still have to pay the tax. Then all of a sudden they go, this industry sucks. Nobody can make any money from it. It's like, well, yeah, you can, but you're just doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And then to come to your, or actually was your question about the medicinal side of things, I don't really believe in these new situations where they're like, this is going to be a high and a myrcene, so therefore it's going to attack your pain and you're going to feel this,
That's
this,
all
or this.
Yeah.
It's all body chemistry. I don't care. One of my bud tenders once estimated that I've sold weed to about 18,000 individual people. That being said, I feel like I've had my share of scientific experiments.
Right on.
I like to say over 3 million sold.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
How McDonald's says over 3 billion.
And it's
I like
just
to say
like
over 3 million.
You look at these people and you hear these strains and they're like, this one's going to make you laugh. And these people go and they buy it. They smoke it at night. Next thing you know, they go, where's Jimmy? And Jimmy's in the closet in a fetal position because he's got such bad anxiety from the laugh strain.
Right. And he's curled up in a ball.
And it's just like, well, it's like, we're laughing at you, but I don't think that was the intended situation,
misleading with this narrative of stuff when it's so subjective.
Exactly.
And it's like I tell people, when you smoking as a major stoner that I am, I don't care. Give me the same weed. When I wake up, it's a different high. After my breakfast, it's a different high. At lunchtime, it's a different high. After lunch, it's a different high. Dinner, it's a different high. And going to sleep is a different high. And I smoked the same bud.
Absolutely. And I will say this, though, straight up across the board. Those GMO cookies and things like that test at like 39%, whatever, they do not get me high.
Yeah,
I will just say that straight up.
They ain't worth shit. You know, and that's the thing. So look. This has been a very, very exciting podcast having you come on. You guys, I want you to really go out, check out the Duke of Pico.
Yeah.
Go get this book.
On Amazon.
Has a lot of good information from a true OG right here that blessed us with his presence on this podcast.
Yeah, I got goosebumps too because I like being around my OGs because I know what I do and I know what I did.
Yeah, no doubt.
But y'all my predecessors.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, like it's
yeah. Well, the thing is we did what we did to be able to pass the torch on, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And some of us still are in the mix of it.
Yeah.
And so we're still trying to create certain narratives here in the industry.
Yeah.
As older minds, as vets in the industry, we still can see where this industry could and is going. I see it. I now have put it into practice of where this industry is going, and I'll share that with you guys off camera because this is something personal to me, and I'm doing it. And once it actually takes off to the moon like I know it is, then I will then publicly announce this sector of the business. But I see where this is going. And I know where it's going. And I'm going to help take it there. But
I'm in this until the end.
Exactly. But I want you guys to go pick this up. Yeah, because I always tell them my exit plan is death.
Yes. I always say I'm going to be like Marlon Brando in The Godfather and just drop dead amongst my weed plants.
Exactly, exactly. So go out and get the Duke of Pico. It was a pleasure having Oliver here.
man.
Pleasure was mine, gentlemen.
On our
Thank
podcast.
you so much.
Honest opinion. How was the Gush Mints?
I actually thoroughly enjoyed the Gush Mints. I've always been a mints fan, personally.
Right on.
When I had my hip replaced, I didn't take any opiates whatsoever. I just used mints as a painkiller. And so I stand behind that as a genetic.
Right on. Go out or come out, go to any one of the 3 locations, California Cannabis. That is our Gush Mints from the farm. You hear me? I said from the farm. All organic, no pesticides, no nothing. Come in and purchase it from California Cannabis, any of the 3 locations, California Cannabis Crenshaw, California Cannabis Melrose, or California Cannabis Soto.
Yep.
We appreciate y'all tuning in. We had an amazing guest. We really appreciate him blessing our studio with his presence. A wealth of knowledge. I wish we had a lot more time because this guy has a lot of information stored up. But he shared it with you in his book. So this is just a glimpse of it. There's a lot more that we as old school players have experienced and done in this industry that sometimes when we sit down and talk, we forget about some of the things that we've done until somebody else speaks on it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Damn, that's right, we did do that. So hey, he gave you as much as he could remember in the book, but it's enjoyable and it's impactful. So go out, go on Amazon, purchase this book, y'all. Support my guy Oliver Summer, and also come get you some Gush Mints while you reading his book because it's gonna have you relaxed and in the groove. So thank y'all for tuning in from Token Tuesday, where real cannabis players talk about real cannabis issues. We don't fake the funk here. Everybody that comes here is done something prominent in the cannabis industry and is a real player now. We ain't those ones that then came from, the music industry or the entertainment industry or the football or basketball.
We're supplying those people.
We are real cannabis players, straight from the streets to the suites, y'all. And we gonna holler at y'all on that note. We'll be back next Tuesday for Token Tuesday. Make sure you click the button and subscribe before y'all get up out of here. Don't forget that. Subscribe on whichever streaming channel that you on with Token Tuesday. Also send us some emails or in our comment boxes on our social media pages, California Cannabis on Instagram. We're on Facebook, all of them. Reach out to us. Tell us what you think. Hey, we love to hear from you because we are here for you.
Yep.
On that note, we gonna holler at y'all. Peace out.
Token Tuesday, it's what we do. We just sit around, smoke a pound, and talk about what we do in the cannabis world. We gon' let you know how the business go on a brand new show. Token Tuesday, show you how to do it right. You need seed.